We're on a mission from God.
Wendy? Stay away!
So I got that going for me.
Darling?
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Light of my life.
We enjoy your films.
I am a human being.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in real time, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Raging Bull on December 19th, 1980. It was written by Paul Schrader and Mardik Martin, based on Raging Bull, My Story by Jake LaMotta, with Joseph Carter and Peter Savage, directed by Martin Scorsese, and released by United Artists. Working titles for the film included The Life of Jake LaMotta and The Prize Fighter. Jake LaMotta, nicknamed the Bronx Bull, fought over 100 professional fights. In his 1970 autobiography, LaMotta admitted what he'd denied over the years, that he threw his 1947 fight against Billy Fox. While working on Godfather 2, De Niro read LaMotta's autobiography and brought the book to Scorsese, suggesting he direct it. Mean Streets screenwriter Mardik Martin put together a draft, and Taxi Driver screenwriter Paul Schrader did an extensive rewrite that focused the film more on the relationship between the brothers, who Joey did not make an appearance in the previous drafts of the story or in the book even.
Does he exist at all?
Yes.
Okay.
But he was not included in their version of the story. Scorsese was initially disinterested in doing a boxing film, but when he was briefly hospitalized in the late 70s from a cocaine overdose, De Niro visited him repeatedly in the hospital and eventually talked him into it.
Well, what a coincidence. I was disinterested in watching a boxing film.
There you go. De Niro trained with LaMotta for a year prior to production and reached a technical level that wouldn't require a boxing double for the fight scenes. Toward the end of his training, De Niro entered 3 Brooklyn boxing matches and actually won 2 of them.
I mean, it was very convincing.
Yes.
I don't watch boxing, but from a filmmaking perspective, I was convinced that he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Production took a hiatus in order for De Niro to gain between 55 and 60 pounds to shoot the older LaMotta scenes, a record until D'Onofrio gained 70 pounds for Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. Post-production delays shifted the release date from summer to Christmas, and according to Scorsese, the decision to shoot black and white arose from a conversation with Schoonmaker's husband, British director Michael Powell, while they watched some 8mm rehearsal shots. Powell told Scorsese that the color of the gloves looked wrong to him, and Scorsese had an idea for a fix. I'll shoot it in black and white.
It'll look right? Fine. No color. You get no color.
Though some quote a line from LaMotta's book where he describes his recollections of his life as having been in black and white. After the film's release, Jake and Vickie, the real people, made occasional public appearances together, and after seeing the movie together, he asked her if he was ever that bad, and Vickie said, "You were much worse than that."
I bet.
The film won Oscars for actor for Robert De Niro and editing for Thelma Schoonmaker, and nominations for picture, supporting for Pesci, supporting for Moriarty, director, cinematographer, and sound.
Yeah, and I feel like, to say in Vickie's defense, the entire time I was watching this movie, it was very clear to me that it was not from the female perspective.
Right. The film opens with slow motion footage of LaMotta warming up in a foggy ring. This is actually the ring we'll see later, where LaMotta faces off against Cerdan for the middleweight championship. All the flashbulbs going off in the fog around the ring are being triggered by the same guy, cinematographer Michael Chapman, running frantically around the ring in a black velour cloak to remain invisible to camera and make it look like pictures are being taken from all angles. We cut to 1964.
You couldn't get a couple PAs?
Apparently not. We cut to 1964 New York at an appearance by former boxer Jake LaMotta. The footage is sort of documentary style, and we're hanging out with him in a dressing room area, and he's reciting a bit of poetry from his life.
I remember those cheers. They still ring in my ears, and for years they remain in my thoughts. Because one night, I took off my robe, and what'd I do? I forgot to wear shorts. I recall every fall, every hook, every jab. The worst way a guy can get rid of his flab.
He stumbles a bit with the words, but eventually comes to the part that inspires the book and film's title.
And though I'm no Olivier, if before Sugar Ray, he would say that the thing ain't the ring, it's the play. So give me a stage where this bullhead can rage, and though I can fight, I'd much rather recite. That's entertainment.
Robert De Niro's transformation is so significant that as we start this movie, this is the first time we're seeing him. I didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
I didn't figure out that was him until after we cut back, and I was like, oh, that was him, just because it was so unexpected for me. I've never seen him look like that.
Well, he's got a lot more weight on him. It's also mostly in his face, which is just interesting that he gains weight that way, because I think it's what makes you less recognizable, that it's not just a gut.
Yeah.
That it's his whole head changes shape.
It was
But
amazing.
he's also wearing facial prosthetics in the form of like a flattened nose, and he looks kind of beaten down a little bit.
Yeah. But the transformation is so dramatic. I didn't realize it was him until we flashed back, and then I was like, wait a minute, that's him.
Yes. We jump back in time to 1941, and Jake LaMotta is in the corner of the ring facing off against Jimmy Reeves at the Cleveland Arena. LaMotta is undefeated, but well behind on points. A bell rings, sending the men to their corners, and LaMotta's brother Joey is asking him to just finish the fight already. They didn't come to Cleveland to lose. The crowd is ruthless, and they're all throwing each other around outside the ring. In the 10th round, LaMotta speeds up and knocks Reeves to the ground multiple times. After Reeves gets up the second time, LaMotta pins him to the ropes with a barrage of body shots and a handful of headshots, but unfortunately he holds him against the ropes for too long, and the ref can't get a 10 count before the round ends, and the fighters are being judged by their points and not the knockout.
So this is a running problem that I have with the film, is that I know absolutely nothing about boxing, and it just, like, the fact that all these things revolve around the scoring and how he's doing in the fights, like, I just wish that it didn't matter.
Yeah, there's basically 3 levels to a victory. There's knockout, which is you hit the person, they hit the ground, they don't get up in 10 seconds. Technical knockout, where the person has to surrender the fight because they're not capable of continuing the fight, even if they weren't knocked out.
Yeah.
And a point system, which is over the course of 10 rounds, they are literally counting the amount of punches that were thrown, that connected, and the whole way through it, to, like, judging people on their form, the way you would for, like, a gymnastics
Yeah, I was
team.
going to say, it's a gymnastics.
Essentially, yeah. But because this guy was so far ahead on points, it doesn't matter that he technically, it was an official knockout, but they didn't get to the 10 count because...
But this isn't interesting to me.
I agree.
It might be realistic to the life of this boxer, but it's not an interesting way to run this film, I think, to be like, oh, it's about points.
And it also seems like the rules are different in Cleveland than they are in New York, where he typically fights, because he didn't know how long the round was supposed to be, because after the fight they're reminding him, like, this is Cleveland, the rounds are different here, so now you screwed up, basically.
Yeah.
And the panel of judges side with Jimmy Reeves as a unanimous victor in this fight. The crowd is losing their shit because they just saw Jake LaMotta knock the guy out, and that should be the end of the fight. And they start throwing chairs into the ring. They're stampeding through the venue over women in the audience.
Yeah.
A dude does like a complete like triple flip into the crowd. There's all these insane like stunt set pieces of people just throwing people around here.
That is something that stood out to me, was the amount of setups and shots that they have to do for all of these crazy scenes is just ridiculous. I'm like, I would not want to have to produce a film like this.
And Scorsese specifically shot these single camera with the intention of getting each insert individually, planning out the whole scene. Yeah. Jake throws his arms up in the ring as if he won, and the crowd loves it, but they know that this fight will be officially recorded for Reeves. We cut from this unfolding riot, which is a real thing that happened. A riot broke out at this fight, to the Bronx, New York City, 1941. Joey LaMotta is walking through the Bronx with Salvy, an associate of Tommy Como's, local organized crime boss. He is advising Joey to talk some sense into Jake about working with Tommy. He insists that without Tommy's help, that his brother will be stuck in these dead-end fights and he'll never have a chance at the title.
I'm never super clear on what Tommy does.
Tommy is a mafioso type who can make things happen behind the scenes. He can organize these fights so that he gets a chance at the title.
Yeah.
But if he refuses to cooperate with them and help them earn money, they're never going to even put him in those matches.
So he's just an influential dude.
Yes.
Okay, he's not like the head of any sort of boxing association.
No, not
or
a
something.
boxing association. More like the Godfather. He's
Okay.
like more a mafioso type.
Yeah, because later on they'll have a discussion where Joey is telling him that no one, you can't fight anybody because no one's going to fight you. And I think that's because the mob boss is holding back on letting people fight him.
Right.
And so he comes up with a plan later, which we'll get to, that you can do this, and either way you have to get a shot at the title. And you do it on your own.
Yeah.
Joey says it's not easy to convince Jake of anything, but that he'll at least try to talk to him before telling Salvy to fuck off. Like, all right, I agreed to what you asked me for. Leave me the fuck alone. Go away. In his apartment, Jake LaMotta is picking on his wife, who assumed that night he was out cheating on her and not at a fight. He asks if the steak she's cooking is done, and she says not yet. He demands it anyway, assuming that she's going to cook it to a charcoal, and eventually she just hands it over. I'm guessing that when he saw it, he realized it was not done.
Yeah.
And instead of admitting he was wrong, he flips the whole table and starts shouting at her for being pissed off at him in the first place. Inside, Joey sees right away that Jake is in no mood for a conversation. He and his wife are shouting at each other, and the fighting gets so loud that a neighbor downstairs starts shouting at them from outside the window. Jake starts shouting down to that guy that he's going to kill their dog if he doesn't mind his own business. Jake is especially pissed off when the man calls him an animal.
Crazy animal. Who's an animal? Your mother's an animal, you son of a bitch. Oh. You're gonna find your dog dead in the hallway tomorrow, you bum.
For whatever reason, you can tell that this is getting under Jake's skin, and he's very upset by this phrase in particular. His wife hides in another room, knocking things over and breaking things, and then Joey sits down with Jake at the counter, and he says, "You can't keep eating and drinking and fighting with girls like this. You need to straighten your life out." Jake confesses that what's bothering him at the moment is not any of this, but that his hands are too small, because it means he can never fight a heavyweight champ.
Are the hands that determination?
Well, the weight in general is a determination of it,
Yeah,
but
but
also
you get
if your hands are
heavier.
very small, you're probably not viable in that weight class.
Well, and that's what also bothered me. The whole point of this thing, it seems like he's worried about gaining weight. It's like, well, why can't he gain weight and go into another weight class?
Because
Yeah.
his hands are too small.
I don't know. Too much of this movie to me revolves around the technical aspects of boxing.
Yes. Joey tells him that he could still be the middleweight champ and that it's crazy to complain about not being able to fight in a weight class that you don't belong to. Suddenly, Jake is asking his brother to hit him in the face, and Joey resists for as long as he physically can, but eventually agrees to it with his hand wrapped in a towel. But Jake demands a bare fist punch, and eventually Joey concedes and cracks him in the face enough times to reopen all of his cuts from the fight the night before. Apparently, on set, the two of them are actually punching each other in the face for this scene. I don't know if that's true, but
It doesn't look like it. Honestly, the way they have the camera framing on him,
it doesn't look like
it looks like he's
Pesci
pulling.
is getting hit at the very least.
No, but when he's hitting De Niro, it doesn't look like he's getting hit.
Yeah.
They framed it very intentionally, and it kind of looks fake to me.
Yeah.
Like he's pulling it.
We cut to the local gym where Jake and Joey are sparring, and a group of mafioso types suddenly show up to say hello. Jake is visibly upset to see them here and starts pounding on Joey, who he knows invited these guys. Apparently in the scene, De Niro actually broke one of Pesci's ribs. Salvy takes the mafia guys away when he could see that Jake isn't in a conversing mood. Joey admits that he invited them here, and Jake says,
Don't ever bring him up here again, you hear me? Nah, you a jerk?
I'm a jerk?
Yeah.
You're a fucking asshole. Hey, the fucking hit me, huh? Yeah, you fucking almighty.
We cut to a local swimming pool where Jake is noticing a blonde girl sunbathing. He asks Joey her name, and it's Vickie. Jake asks if any of the guys talking to her are her boyfriend, and Joey says,
Don't go with nobody. She's 15 years old. Where the fuck's she gonna go? You gonna take her to Copacabana?
he says he heard a rumor that Salvy had a young blonde girlfriend, and Joey says, yeah, I don't think that's her. Joey admits that he took her out a couple of times, but he never got anywhere. Joey reminds Jake that he's married and that he should leave these young girls for him to pursue, but Jake doesn't seem to care. Back at his apartment, Jake and Joey are getting dressed to go out for a night on the town. His wife asks where they think they're going, and he says out and invites her to do the same wherever she wants. He doesn't care. She shouts at them until they leave, and then she shouts out a window at them on the sidewalk, even tossing a glass bottle down at them, which almost hits Joey. Joey and Jake get to a church dance that looks more like a nightclub, and Joey is waving to a friend named Beansy, who has a table set up for them. A priest stops by their table to say hello, and one of the guys says,
Hello, Fox. You want to get late? Sure.
As the priest backs away. One of the guys sitting around this table is John Turturro in his first feature film role.
Really?
Yeah, but he doesn't get to say anything here. Jake notices Vickie at a table full of girls across the room, and he moves outside where he notices a car full of Como's guys across the street. As a pack of troublemakers are being thrown out of the church, Jake reverses course and heads back into the dance. The next day, Jake and Joey park outside the fence around the pool and shout for Vickie. When she comes to the gate, Joey offers to introduce his brother. She seems into him right away, or maybe just his car, and he asks if she wants to go for a ride. She says she has to change first, and we cut to them on a ride somewhere. Just the two of them. Joey didn't come. Jake coaches her to sit alongside him in the driver's side with his arm over her, and he takes her out for some mini golf and helps with her swing. Her ball disappears into the miniature church and never comes out the other side.
What does that mean?
Means the game is over. Come on, let's go.
He brings Vickie to his home.
I thought he was at his dad's place calling for his dad.
It's a value.
It's a bird. It was a bird. It's dead now, I think.
The tour ends in the bedroom, and they move to the bed where we cut away to a fight with Sugar Ray Robinson in Detroit of 1943. My biggest problem with movie boxing, and this movie is no exception, is that there are so many unblocked punches that would literally knock anyone out that don't seem to have any effect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get that they're not actually hitting each other here, but just don't show that happen if that's not how real boxing works. There's people put their arms up and they block punches. They don't just take punches point blank to the face over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Jake knocks Robinson out of the ring after a flurry of punches, and flashbulbs are going off constantly. Robinson is saved by the bell. A microphone descends from above the ring as the winner is announced. This time LaMotta wins unanimously on points against the formerly undefeated Robinson. This is the only time in the 6 times that they fought that he actually beat Robinson. Before we cut away, the announcer confesses that LaMotta should be offered a chance at the middleweight crown because of this win. We cut back to LaMotta's apartment, where apparently he lives with Vickie now. We don't even see his wife officially leave him. There's no divorce or anything. It's just now he lives here with a different girl. Jake is coaxing Vickie out of the bathroom in a nightgown.
You said never to touch her before a fight.
Come here, before I give you a beat.
Said I couldn't. You've been good for 2 weeks.
Come here.
Jake asks her to undress him on the bed and then undress herself. She's kissing him all over when he suddenly sits up. He needs to get ready for the fight, and he dumps ice water into his boxers to calm himself down. Vickie sneaks up behind him and starts kissing him again.
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
We cut to another matchup between LaMotta and Robinson. Detroit, 43, their third fight.
Jake LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson meet for the 3rd time. These men are unique, becoming classic rivals. These 2 men, fierce, powerful fighters, dangerous, so much so that no other fighter will go near them. And so, they fight each other.
They're up to round 7, and Robinson is leading in points. Jake knocks Robinson down again, which is only Robinson's 2nd time on the floor in his entire career after the last time Jake knocked him down. This time, Robinson unanimously wins the judges. We cut backstage where Joey is so pissed off that he's destroying chairs in the locker room. Joey says that the judges only awarded Robinson the win because he's headed off to the war shortly. Jake sends Joey to see that Vickie gets home all right, because he doesn't want to see her like this after having lost. We cut to Jake with his fist in a bucket of ice water. LaMotta versus Zivik, Detroit, January 14th, 1944. We only get quick flashes of the fights in this montage, and then we cut to home video of Jake, Vickie, and Joey.
Which is the only color footage that we get.
Right. Before this, we did see the title was red over black and white footage, but other than that, this is the only color that we have in the whole film. LaMotta versus Basora, New York, August 10th, 1945. Again, quick flashes of the fight, like 1 or 2 frames, and then we cut to wedding footage of Jake and Vickie. So apparently he's completely divorced his previous wife and is now married again. LaMotta versus Cochan, New York, September 17th, 1945. The fights are coming and going faster now. Jake and Vickie play alongside a pool, and she pushes him in, and then he drops her in. LaMotta versus Edgar, Detroit, June 12th, 1946. After that quick fight, we see Joey marrying Teresa Saldana as Lenore. LaMotta versus Satterfield, Chicago, September 12th, 1946. We see Jake carry Vickie up the steps to their new home together, and now they have kids. LaMotta versus Bell, New York, March 14th, Pi Day, 1947. Jake is winning all these fights, by the way. Pelham Parkway, Bronx, New York, 1947. We see Jake come downstairs to chew Joey out for setting up a fight with someone named Niro. Apparently, to even qualify for the fight, Jake would have to lose 13 pounds, which he seems to think is impossible. He doesn't know if he can make it down to 155, and if he doesn't, he's going to lose $15,000.
Oh, you're supposed to be a manager. You're supposed to know what you're doing.
I did just what I wanted to do.
That's what I'm worried about. You did it.
You want a title shot?
What are you talking?
Do you want a title shot?
What am I in? What am I in a circus over here? I asked him. He's got more sense about this. What are you
You've
doing?
been killing yourself for 3 years now, right? There's nobody left for you to fight. Everybody's afraid to fight you. Okay, along comes this kid, Niro. He don't know any better. He's a young kid, up and coming, and fight anybody. Good, you fight him.
Then Joey explains that the weight doesn't really matter because if he can't get under 155, then he loses the fight and the money, but more people will be willing to fight him knowing that he just lost. And if he wins, then they have to give him a shot at the title because there's nobody else to fight.
If you win, you win. If you lose, you still win. There's no way you can lose. And you do it on your own, just the way you wanted to do it, without any help from anybody. You understand? Just get down to 155 pounds, you fat bastard. You stop eating.
In the kitchen, Vickie jumps into the conversation to say that Joey's right and that this Niro kid is good-looking and popular and that if he beats him, they'll have to give him a shot. Obviously, the only part Jake heard is that she thinks that this guy is good-looking, and he starts chewing her out for that. Jake asks her to leave the room and take the kid with her. Joey's wife comes to her defense and is similarly dismissed from the kitchen. Joey starts to talk Jake through the training for their fight, but Jake is still distracted by the fact that Vickie thinks this boxer is good-looking. He asks Joey if he ever saw her do anything suspicious and asks him to keep an eye out. We cut from here to the Copacabana Lounge. A comedian on stage introduces
the world's leading middleweight contender, the Bronx Bull, the Raging Bull. Let's hear for the great Jake LaMotta, ladies and gentlemen.
From his booth, Jake notices Vickie talking to Salvy as though she knows him. Salvy tells her that he's here with Tommy and some of the gang and invites them to join him. Salvy heads over to Jake and Joey's table to invite them personally to Tommy's table. Vickie stops by to say hello, and when she gets back, Jake starts interrogating her about why she said anything to anybody over there. Of course, he assumes she's flirting, and she denies it. Tommy sends a pack of drinks over in the middle of their disagreement, and Joey goes to sit with Tommy. Joey and Tommy together wave Jake over until he reluctantly joins the table. The guys around the table talk about Niro and his pretty boy reputation. He doesn't have any scars, which means he doesn't really have much experience either. They ask Jake if he's gained a little weight, and he admits he has, but that he'll lose it easily. Tommy Como asks Jake flat out, if you were me and you were betting on you, how much would you tell me?
I always say bet everything you got. Everything.
He tells the guys, he's so pretty, I don't know whether to fuck him or fight him. Tommy thinks this is hilarious, and the whole table cracks up. Jake finds Vickie in bed when he gets home, and he asks why she said what she said about Niro, being pretty. And in her half-asleep voice, she tells him that she doesn't even know what she's talking about, and she's never seen the guy. We cut right to the fight with Niro. It was during this fight that I first got the impression that maybe Vickie had never heard of Niro and just said he was pretty to motivate Jake to beat this guy mercilessly. But I don't think that's the case moving forward.
No, I think she was probably, if she never saw him, she was just repeating what she had heard.
Or she knew exactly who it was and thought that he was good looking and just wasn't careful enough to not admit that in front of Jake. But Jake destroys this kid and wins the fight by unanimous decision. He ain't pretty no more. We cut to Jake jogging in a sauna full of steam. A trainer steps inside, and he begs for a sliver of ice to put under his tongue, but he's trying to lose water weight, and the trainer says, nope, you got to lose 4 more pounds. We cut to the Copacabana, where Joey is chatting up a couple of older guys about his brother's match with Niro. He notices Vickie come in with Salvy and some other friends, and he's completely distracted from his conversation by her presence. He takes Vickie by the arm and tells her that she's leaving immediately. They argue for a moment, and Vickie heads back to the table, but right away Joey is there to drag her by the arm again. Salvy tries to convince Joey that this is just an innocent get-together, and they're just having a few drinks. Joey tells him repeatedly to shut up, eventually shattering a glass on the table, and Salvy still isn't getting the hint. Joey pretends to apologize for the disruption, but then leans forward and smashes the second glass on Salvy's face before leaping over the table to pummel him into the booth, for the classic Joe Pesci moment of the scene.
We're friends, we can straighten this out. Right? Huh? Right? Nothing going on? Nothing going on?
Joey follows Vickie out of the club, and then Salvy follows Joey. Joey hides by the door until Salvy comes out, and then he beats him with a stanchion and throws him down the club steps, eventually slamming his head in the door of a taxi cab at the curb.
This is by far the best moment of the entire film.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci freaking out on this guy is amazing.
Which is crazy, because at this point in his career, Pesci had almost nothing to his name. He was in a couple movies before this, and he had basically retired from acting for 4 years before Scorsese talked him into taking this role. And it's amazing. He's incredible. A crowd of men try to stop him from slamming this guy's head in the door, and then Joey breaks free and climbs over the top of the car to escape following Vickie away from the club. Later, Joey and Salvy meet together at the Debonair Club to make amends with Tommy, the head of, the local families. He orders them to shake hands, and Joey extends his hand first. Everybody promises to get past this and pretend it never happened, and Tommy asks if he can speak with Joey alone. When Salvy stands to leave, Joey gives him a quick and painful hug.
I'm sorry, I forgot all about it. Oh, you fucking nuts.
Tommy tries to put it as simply as he can. He needs Jake to cooperate so they can make some money for the neighborhood people. Joey tries to explain.
He likes to do things his own way. I mean, Jesus Christ could come off the cross sometimes. You don't give a fuck. He's going to do what he wants to do. He wants to make it on his own, Thinks he can make it on his own.
Make it on his own.
Tommy points out that this is a pipe dream and that he'll never get a shot at the title on his own. If he doesn't cooperate with the people who set these fights up, then he's going to waste his entire career fighting bums. I can't tell if forcing Jake into this agreement is a punishment for Joey beating up Salvy or not.
I have no idea.
Because Salvy is already like a part of the group. Like he's in the family. He's in the people that control these neighborhoods. And so it feels like Tommy is saying, this is what you're going to do in exchange for this truce that I just organized.
Well, I would say that it seemed like they were trying to keep him out of having a chance at the title before this moment.
Yes.
But what they ask him to do after he agrees is probably the revenge for this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because he has to give up on his chance for the title.
We cut from this conversation to Joey racing through pouring rain to meet with Jake at the public pool to deliver Tommy's message. Apparently, Jake knew this meeting was going to happen and doesn't even ask Joey what they ended up talking about because he's too distracted thinking about having met Vickie here. Joey tells him to stop obsessing over this girl and to get her out of his life so he can focus on the fighting. Eventually, Jake asks what orders have been handed down from Tommy Como, and Joey says, essentially, you have to lose a fight. With Billy Fox, you're going to take a dive, and you have to lose this fight for them to make some money, and then in exchange for that, they're going to set you up with a title shot.
Right.
We cut to the fight, where the commissioner takes Jake and Joey on a walk to discuss suspicious changes in the odds for this fight. They notice that a lot of people are betting against Jake, even though he's clearly favored to win. And he's like, are you guys rigging this, or what's going on? Why does it look like this is a fix? And they tell him, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to win this fight. It doesn't matter. And the guy tells him that
It's not good. As a matter of fact, the bets are off on this one. Nothing going in this one. Matter of fact, smart money is saying that you're getting ready to hit the tank.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit. You got any money you want to bet? No, I'll take the action. God, you bet it on Fox, because I'm going to win. There's no way I'm going down. I don't go down for nobody.
That's what I know.
I want you to know that.
Yeah. All right, fine.
All right, Ken.
You came down here just for that nonsense, that was it?
That was it.
Tommy arrives to watch the fight and presumably reap his winnings. The bell rings to kick off the fight, and the boxers approach each other. Jake's first punch lands hard, and his opponent is almost already knocked out. He fakes a few missed punches, trying to help the guy stand up in the corner of the ring, and the fight is such a monumental mismatch that it's obvious to everyone immediately what's going on. The guy is cowering away from Jake, even as the round ends and they're separating. Jake's trainer is slapping him in the corner, asking what the fuck is happening. In another round, we see Jake against the ropes, and this guy lands punch after punch in Jake's face, and he just stands there taking it, asking the guy to please punch harder to sell this dive.
Yeah. Well, but he's not willing to dive. He's
right. He wants to lose on points because
Right.
he's not willing to collapse.
Yeah.
People in the audience are already calling out the dirty fight, though. After 4 rounds, the fight is called, and the winner by technical knockout is Billy Fox. Unfortunately, even though he did what they said, it was such a bad fake loss that none of the bets got paid out because the commission is now looking into the coordinated loss by Jake. In the locker room, Jake is sobbing, and everyone around him is equally disgusted by this pathetic scene.
Fight anymore. It's a free country. Don't fight anymore.
Oh, what I do. What I do. What I do.
We cut right to newspaper headlines about the board suspending LaMotta for rampant cheating. Because nobody got paid for the loss, Tommy and his people are slow to reward Jake with a title shot.
Purse was withheld. Look at this. Purse was withheld pending DA's probe. Look at that.
Joey assures him that as long as Tommy doesn't die, he'll fulfill his promise of a title shot for Jake, which I assumed was foreshadowing, but we don't see him die in the movie. We cut to 2 years later, Detroit, June 15th, 1949, 1 week after my father was born. We see a standee for the middleweight championship fight between Marcel Sardan and Jake LaMotta in the lobby of a building. For some reason, the fight is being delayed at the last minute for an extra day, and Jake is pissed about it, but Joey's pointing out, it's an outdoor arena, we don't have a choice. Jake's corner men are practicing stitching up a busted eyebrow with a big hunk of meat.
They aren't fast enough.
No. They're taking 40 seconds, and it should only be 30.
It's like a pit stop, like a crew changing their tires.
While he's still on the phone, Joey asks if Vickie wants anything from room service food-wise. She asks for cake. Joey tells her that she should have a regular meal, like a burger and fries, and Jake is immediately suspicious about his brother dictating what his wife should eat, and tells her it's a free country. If you want a cake, order a cake. She asks for a cheeseburger. Tommy comes to check in with Jake before the fight, and on his way out, Tommy keeps kissing Jake's wife, and Joey's watching all of this smiling. We're seeing all of this from Jake's perspective in tight inserts, and it's clearly bothering him that all these people are kissing his wife. When Tommy's gone, he calls Vickie over to ask what the hell that was all about, and immediately Joey stands up, prepared to run interference on what is about to be a domestic disturbance. Jake reminds her in the future to just say hello or goodbye, none of this kissing stuff, and even after she agrees, he slaps her hard. Joey moves in closer in case he has to interrupt a full-blown fight. When Jake grabs her by the arm last time, Joey finally intervenes.
Why don't you stop that, huh? Stop it!
Shut up! Shut up! I'll fucking take care of you later! Shut up!
We cut to a last-minute training session in the locker room where Jake is punching his brother in the chest as he wears this big rubber pad around his torso. We get a long tracking shot from the warm-up all the way through the tunnels leading to the ring. The fighters tap gloves, and we see LaMotta versus middleweight champion Marcel Sardan, Detroit 1949. LaMotta wastes no time. Jake bashes the guy's ribs and head until he's very confused on the sidelines. By the end of round 9, his cornermen have to call the fight because he clearly doesn't even know where he is anymore. Jake has his championship. He gets the belt and cries in the ring as he lifts his gloves to the sky, and we cut to Pelham Parkway, New York, 1950. Jake is trying to fix a television by pounding on it instead of just adjusting the rabbit ears. Vickie enters the room and bends over to give Joey a kiss on the lips before checking in with her husband. He asks where she's been, and she says shopping, her sisters, and then she heads upstairs.
What's the matter with you, huh? What's with this kissing on the mouth?
I just said hello. Can I kiss my sister-in-law?
And it's good enough for you? I don't even kiss mom on the mouth the way you kiss. All of a sudden, you're like a Romeo.
So you're not supposed to kiss your mother on the mouth.
That's what I'm talking about.
Jake is obviously not done being suspicious of his brother and works on the TV for a moment more. Jake asks Joey what happened between him and Salvy at the Copacabana. Evidently, word has made it back to Jake. He says Salvy got inappropriate at the club, and it started a fight that ended with him slamming Salvy's head in a taxi door. Jake wants to know why he never heard this story until recently. Joey claims it didn't have anything to do with Jake, but obviously Jake's heard the story and knows that Vickie was also there.
That's not what I heard, Joe.
What do you mean that's not what you heard?
That's not what I heard.
What'd you hear?
I heard some things.
You heard about me and Salvy then?
I heard things, Joey.
Yeah, you heard that I cracked Salvy all around. What'd you hear?
Joey. I heard things.
What things you heard?
I heard some things.
This has become another one of the film's more memorable lines to repeat, and as the argument progresses, Jake gets more and more suspicious of Joey's motives.
You fucked my wife.
What?
You fucked my wife.
How could you ask me a question like that? How could you ask me? I'm your brother. You ask me that? Where do you get your balls big enough to ask me that?
Joey refuses to dignify the question with a response.
There's a section of Eddie Izzard's Dressed to Kill, which I think because I had never seen this movie before, and so I don't think I ever got that reference until I saw this scene.
You fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife. I am your wife. That doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. I say again, you fuck my wife. All right, yes, I fucked your wife. I am your wife and I fucked her.
He tells Jake that he's leaving, and he walks out. Without a straight answer from Joey, he heads to ask Vickie herself. He asks where she's been, and she says she went to the movies to see Father of the Bride. They argue for a moment about why she kept the Copacabana story secret, and then he starts slapping her around. She hides in her bathroom, and he breaks down the door to continue beating on her. The argument culminates with Vickie admitting that yes, she's had sex with Joey and Salvy and Tommy and everybody. Jake marches right out the door, and Vickie tries in vain to slow him down on his way to Joey's house. Apparently they live within walking distance.
Yeah.
Jake walks right into Joey's kitchen and yanks him away from the table with his family. He drags him into the den and punches him repeatedly in the face as Lenore and Vickie try to pull him off. Vickie drags Jake away by the hair until he clocks her in the face and knocks her unconscious. And then Jake just walks out.
And the kids are like right there. And that was really the disturbing part to me, because I'm like, my first priority would be getting the kids out.
Lenore
of that
should have
room.
been moving the kids.
Right, not participating. Get the kids out of there.
Wait, does that mean that if someone comes into our house to beat me up, you're just going to move
my
the
first
kids
priority
around?
is
You're not
moving
gonna
the children.
pull them away from me by their hair? That's fair. We cut back to Jake's own living room, where he's watching the out-of-focus television with the bad V-hold and H-hold because he doesn't know how to use these antennas. Vickie arrives late at night and starts to pack her bags, and Jake slips into the room and calmly begs her to stay, insisting he's a mess without her. He hugs her, and they kiss, and it seems like they actually make up here, which is unfortunate.
This was the moment where I officially stopped caring about Vickie.
Yeah.
We cut back to the ring for the first fight with LaMotta defending his championship. LaMotta's already losing as we enter the fight. It's against Dauthuille in Detroit of 1950. Apparently, the guy Jake won the championship from died in a plane crash. And this is another boxer, also from France, who promised on his behalf to bring the championship back to their country. Dauthuille has Jake against the ropes, and after just standing and taking hits for a moment, Jake turns on him, and the announcers recognize he's been playing possum. He starts pounding Dauthuille from every angle, and we're watching as his skin is just bursting and blood is spurting out all over his face. Dauthuille is unable to stand for a 10 count after this barrage, and Jake has defended his title with 13 seconds left in the final round. I think he was waiting till the last second just to give the guy hope. After the fight, we see Jake and Vickie walking arm in arm through the venue. She suggests calling Joey to apologize and offers to make the call herself and then hand him the phone. He gives her a coin to make the call after thinking about it for a solid 30 seconds. Vickie hands Jake the phone once she's gotten through to Joe, and Joe doesn't seem to know who's on the phone and assumes it's Salvy, but he can hear someone breathing.
I know somebody's there. I can hear you breathing. You listening? Your mother sucks fucking big fucking elephant dicks. You got that?
Jake subtly smiles hearing this from his brother, but hangs up without having said anything to Joey. We cut in slow motion to another fight with Sugar Ray Robinson, and LaMotta is not looking good in his corner. After a round, we see Joey and Lenore watching the fight at home. In the next round, Jake steps away from his corner and doesn't block any of Robinson's punches. He just takes them all full force in the face to show Robinson that he can't knock him down. Ray loses his patience and starts demolishing Jake against the ropes, and now it's his turn to pull a Dauthuille and get his skin busted everywhere. Blood is shooting out in all directions, including a mouthful sprayed across the judges' panel. In slow motion, we see Robinson wind up one last right hook. Finally, the ref calls the fight, even though LaMotta refuses to go down. Jake wanders blindly over to Robinson's corner with his face completely swollen shut and taunts Robinson by pointing out,
Hey, Ray. Never went down, Ray. You never got me down, Ray.
Robinson has now won the championship from Jake. The camera floats through the ring past Jake's disappointed team and Robinson's excited team to stop on a section of rope drenched in Jake's blood and dripping. Apparently, this is one of the images that inspired Scorsese to move forward with making a boxing film. He watched a couple of fights in Madison Square Garden, and he saw how the ropes were sometimes soaked in the blood of the fighters, and he was like, that's such an interesting image.
There's a lot of great imagery in this film.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But it's lacking, I think, in complexities for the characters and the story.
Yeah.
And it's just not super interesting.
We cut to Miami, 1956. This is bigger LaMotta now, and a reporter is asking LaMotta why he just pulled out of his next fight, and he says that he can't be concerned with his weight anymore. He spent too much of his life obsessing over it. He instructs the reporters to take pictures of his happy family, and then he announces that he'll be opening up a nightclub soon and invites them to guess on what he plans on calling it. We see the exterior of Jake LaMotta's nightclub. That's what it's called.
Kind of reminds me of the Mr. Burns' Casino.
Yeah.
I know what people need. A clever name and sex appeal.
Perfect. Inside the club, he's holding a microphone and he rubs it on the dress of a girl sitting on the bar stool next to him as some kind of a joke. People there seem to think it's funny.
Just want to see what the microphone on a sexy girl sounds like.
He tests some of his bad stand-up routine into the mic, and the crowd really gets a kick out of it. At the end of his stand-up set, which was a solid 1 minute maybe, he's backed up by an instrumental track and recites the poem that he was practicing backstage to start the film.
So give me a stage where this bully can rage, and though I can fight, I'd much rather hear myself recite.
Not that he's been painted in a flattering light thus far, but LaMotta is really taken down 1,000 pegs by this whole sequence because he seems absolutely pathetic here. People are still applauding him, but it's like he's a mascot, not like he's a human being that they envy. Jake goes to talk with some guests, and one of them introduces a state's attorney who's there with his wife.
Nice to meet you. Well, you shouldn't be here this week. It's next week we got the shakedown payments, right? The guy sent you with his pizza.
That is a joke.
It's a joke. Only you know if it's a joke. Oh, we'll talk about it later.
He accidentally spills a drink on the guy's wife and then calls for someone to send a free drink over. Jake is drawn into a trio of girls at the bar who are arguing over whether they look 21 or not. He asks them one at a time how old they are and to prove that they're 21 by kissing him one at a time. Later in the night, we see Jake pouring champagne into a tower of champagne glasses for the three girls. A man comes in to tell him that Vickie is waiting outside. Outside, we see it's actually fully morning by now. He goes to speak with her and explains that he stayed till morning because it was a very busy night last night. She informs him through the cracked driver's side window that she's leaving him.
I'm leaving you, Jake.
All right, what else?
No, I mean it this time. I didn't want tights, so I had everything worked out.
Jake tries to get into the car or convince her to let him into the car, but she's made up her mind. She's contacted an attorney and she expects full custody of the children. She drives away. Later, we see LaMotta sweaty in bed, and two men enter his apartment. They're from the DA's office, and they're here to ask him about a girl who was recently seen hanging out in his club.
I think he's sleeping in the club.
Yeah, I think so too, actually. He's like in a back room because he's not in a bed. From the picture they show him, he tells them he doesn't recognize the girl, and they refresh his memory with the detail that he supposedly introduced her to some men. When they tell him that this particular girl was 14 years old, he asks to see the picture again.
You gonna tell me that girl looks 14?
She's 14.
I'm asking you man to man.
What am I gonna say? Come on, we gotta go.
We gotta go downtown?
That's right.
LaMotta is arrested and brought downtown. We cut to Jake knocking on Vickie's door. He's out on bail, and he's looking to find $10,000 worth of sports memorabilia to sell so he can stay out of jail. Vickie doesn't want to let him in because the kids are sleeping, and he promises to be quiet. My lawyer says if I can spread $10,000 around, I can get the case dropped. Right away, he's making a lot of noise. He gets his championship belt out of a drawer, and he starts prying the jewels off of it. He's hitting it with a hammer.
Jake, you're gonna wake my kids up, Jake. You're gonna wake the
He's hammering it so much that plates on a shelf in the foreground are shaken to the point of falling over and shattering.
What's the matter with you? Don't you put the dishes so they don't fall down?
We cut right to a pawn shop or something where he's trying to sell these jewels, and the guy there says, "These would be worth a lot more if you'd brought them in on the belt. I wish you'd talked to me earlier." He asks for $2,000, but the guy offers $1,500 tops. He probably could have gotten $10,000 with the belt, with the jewels on it.
Yeah.
Do you think that he removed the gems from the belt because he wasn't willing to give up the belt?
I don't know. I honestly don't think he cared that much about the belt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he just thought the gems were worth money, and he didn't think belts were worth money.
Okay.
Because he's a dummy.
Yeah.
But that would make sense, too, if he was like, well, I'm willing to give up the gems, but this is my heavyweight belt, so I want to keep that. So it could work either way. But I think he's literally just so stupid that he was just like, oh, I know gems are worth money. I have some gems on my thing. I'll go get those. We cut to Jake in a phone booth with his gut hanging out of his tiny shirt, and he's telling someone that he can't make the $10,000. And then we cut immediately to him being dragged into the Dade County Stockade in Florida, 1957. It takes two cops all of their strength to wrangle him into his cell. It's apparently like a solitary confinement situation, and he shouts after them until they're completely out of earshot, and then moves to the back wall where he's pounding his head and fists into the wall. Looking forward, this actually reminds me a lot of Joaquin Phoenix in The Master when he's beating himself against the bars of his jail cell with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Eventually, Jake collapses into the shadows of his cell. He's talking to himself through tears, and we get the second moment of the year with a character in black and white declaring out loud that he is not an animal.
It's gonna be an animal. I'm not an animal.
Suddenly, we hear more of his stand-up, and we cut to New York City, 1958. He's on a slightly smaller stage now, and we cut to the wide shot to see that it's no longer his club, but a small dive bar that he's appearing as a guest at. The crowd here is not as forgiving of his material. He moves to introduce a burlesque act to follow himself. Later, we see him and the dancer trying to catch a taxi outside the bar when Jake notices his brother across the street. Although now his brother has a mustache.
Looking a lot like Tony Shalhoub.
He really does. Jake tells the girl he'll catch up with her and moves to get his brother's attention. Joey takes some effort to ignore his brother's approach, but eventually Jake is just in his face, completely blocking the car. Jake wraps his arms around Joey, but isn't getting a hug in return. He is essentially demanding Joey's forgiveness because he needs something permanent in his life. He can't stop hugging and kissing Joey, and it's really pissing Joey off. We don't have to do this here. Come on. We can call you in a couple days. You call me, huh? Yeah, I'll call you.
He's not going to call.
No, he's not. He for sure doesn't even have a good number for this guy. We cut to the Barbizon Plaza, where guests will be doing readings of Paddy Chayefsky, Rod Serling, Shakespeare, Bud Schulberg, and Tennessee Williams. In the green room, we see a light bulb, a rotary phone, some coat hangers, and we hear Jake talking to his reflection about the closing scene from On the Waterfront. The scene he's quoting is a little too close to describing the exact events of the film, although Scorsese insists that Jake doesn't hold anything against Joey, and he doesn't want people to read too much into this. Like, he just picked the scene at random, but it seems like a weird scene to choose at random.
It really does. It really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
It's very on-the-nose description of their disagreement.
It really feels like Scorsese was just like, okay, how do I make On the Waterfront?
Yeah. But it seems like LaMotta has this whole scene at least memorized, but his delivery is obviously very bland and lackluster. De Niro could do it better because he's a solid actor.
Right. I don't know if this is intended to be his performance versus just going through the lines, making sure he has them.
Scorsese said that he wanted him deliver it flatly because, for one, LaMotta's not supposed to be a good actor, but two, he wanted to show how dispassionate he was with the dialogue, that it doesn't resonate inside of him. He doesn't blame his brother for anything that happened. This is the second time that De Niro has played a character that Brando played after the two of them won Oscars for playing the Godfather in the Godfather series.
It was you, Charlie. You was my brother. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have looked out for me just a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit. Instead of making me take them dice for the short end money. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie.
Somebody pops into his room to give Jake a 5-minute warning. I think this is Martin Scorsese's cameo.
Ready? You got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Need anything?
Nah.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Jake gives himself one last look in the mirror.
Go get him, champ.
And then he throws a flurry of punches in the air.
I'm the boss, I'm the boss, I'm the boss, I'm the boss, I'm the boss.
We cut to black. A title card reads, "So, for the second time, the Pharisees summoned the man who had been blind and said, 'Speak the truth before God. We know this fellow is a sinner.' 'Whether or not he is a sinner, I do not know,' the man replied. 'All I know is this. Once I was blind, and now I see.' John 9:24-26, the New English Bible. Remembering Haig P. Manoogian, teacher. May 23rd, 1916 to May 26th, 1980. With love and resolution, Marty." Haig Manoogian was a professor at NYU Film School. He taught both Scorsese and Thelma Schoonmaker and actually first introduced them. And that's the end of our film. It's a weird choice to end it with this line from the Bible because it's only significant to the teacher and not to the story of the film at all.
Yeah, that actually really bothered me. That I'm like, it's great that he's making a tribute to his teacher here.
And I'm sure it mattered to Thelma also.
Of course, and I fully respect that, but I feel like it's not relevant to the movie.
No, it's not. And I honestly think Manoogian would have been like, take that off of there.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do that, like, put something at the beginning.
Just in loving memories, fine.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
You can dedicate it
to
me at the
quote,
start.
It's confusing because it's not relevant to the story.
Yeah.
Our director here was Martin Scorsese. He directed Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, King of Comedy. He's an uncredited director on the new Joker movie, according to me. He played Van Gogh in Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. He's a voice in Shark's Tale with De Niro. You know Scorsese.
Classic.
Don't joke around with me. You know who he is. He also played Barbizon Stagehand in this, which I think is the guy who gives the 5-minute warning. The novel was written by Jake LaMotta, who played a bartender in The Hustler. And he also has another writing credit for 2016's The Bronx Bull, which is another life story of Jake LaMotta. The novel was co-written with Joseph Carter. This was his only credit. And Peter Savage, who appears in other Scorsese films, including as the John in Taxi Driver and Horace Morris's assistant in New York, New York. He plays Jackie Curdy in this film. Writer Paul Schrader obviously wrote Taxi Driver for Scorsese before this. He also wrote and directed American Gigolo earlier this year. He wrote Cat People, Mosquito Coast, and Bringing Out the Dead.
Oh, and he's the one that was married to Mary something Beth from our Change of Seasons earlier this year.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, she played the daughter in that movie, remember?
She was married to Paul Schrader?
Yeah, Mary Beth Hurt.
I forgot that. Our other writer, Mardik Martin, wrote Mean Streets and New York, New York for Scorsese before this, and he plays a waiter at the Copacabana. Michael Chapman was our cinematographer. He worked on Taxi Driver, The Man with Two Brains, Lost Boys, and then a bunch of Bill Murray stuff, Scrooged, Ghostbusters 2, Quick Change, Space Jam. Editor Thelma Schoonmaker edited all the great Scorsese movies. She has Oscars for this, The Aviator, and The Departed. And she's obviously worked on very few non-Scorsese directed films, including the Scorsese executive produced The Snowman in 2017 for Universal, which is why I still have emails saved from her that she sent me. They were group emails, but still, it's always nice to see an email come from Thelma Schoonmaker. The music producer was Robbie Robertson. We had him earlier this year in Carney. He was the lead guitarist and songwriter for the band, and the soundtrack for Raging Bull was long tied up in rights issues and was not available for purchase until 2005.
Huh.
Damn.
Very weird. Robert De Niro played Jake LaMotta. This was his first and last film. No, he's in Cape Fear, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Casino, and Irishman for Marty.
Which is so funny because I've seen like one of those movies that you just listed.
We'll get through them.
I've seen more of his recent stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't mention Analyze This.
Hold on, I have more stuff.
Oh, okay.
He's in Godfather, Deer Hunter, Brazil. These are more movies you haven't seen.
Yes.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Jackie Robinson, and Meet the Parents, as well as
Ronan.
the Analyze This and That. Ronan, yeah.
Yeah, Ronan's a good one.
Cathy Moriarty played Vickie LaMotta. She'll be back next year in Neighbors. She played Sylvester's mom in Kindergarten Cop. That's the mom that's constantly hitting on Arnold over
Yeah.
the course of the movie. She's Patty LaPresti in Analyze That. And she's Mary Brown in But I'm a Cheerleader. She was recommended by Pesci, who was familiar with her husky voice and modeling career. This was her first film. She was only 20 years old.
I instantly recognized her.
From which one?
From Casper?
From Casper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, that was just like, oh my God, it's the woman from Casper, who I actually get confused, like, in my brain.
With Sharon Stone?
No, I cast her as Kathleen Turner.
Oh, okay.
So in my brain, I was like, yeah, it was Kathleen Turner in Casper. But then I saw her in this, I saw this, and I was like, no, it's this lady.
I think I used to confuse her with Sharon Stone because I was always thinking of Casino when I would think back on this movie. But Sharon Stone did audition for this role, but obviously she wouldn't play De Niro's wife until they did Casino later. But this would have been her second consecutive black and white film this year after Stardust Memories if she had been cast. Beverly D'Angelo also auditioned, but would have had to choose between this and Coal Miner's Daughter. And when she was not given this role, she took Coal Miner's Daughter, which I think was the better move for her.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't have gotten to hear her sing. She has a fantastic singing voice. Joe Pesci played Joey. He's back with Scorsese for Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman. He's also Vinny in My Cousin Vinny. He's one of the wet bandits in the first couple Home Alones. He plays Leo Getz in 3 of the Lethal Weapon films.
They fuck you with cell phones.
Frank Vincent played Salvy. He's Billy Batts in Goodfellas. He's Frank Marino in Casino. And he's Phil Leotardo on The Sopranos, which I haven't actually seen still.
You should. It's a great show.
Nicholas Colasanto played Tommy Como. He's Ruben in Fat City. He's Constantine in Family Plot, but he's best known for playing Ernie Coach Pantuso on Cheers. He's wonderful on that show. I love him so much. And eventually he had to leave the show due to complications from heart disease, and his absence was eventually filled with the introduction of Woody Harrelson's character. But yeah, he was really funny on that show. He's basically like 100% dad jokes, all of his.
Yeah.
It was all puns and him misunderstanding people. Teresa Saldana played Lenore. We had her earlier this year in Defiance, where we discussed her being stalked and stabbed repeatedly, but surviving. She survived. It's okay. Until very recently, and then she passed away, but not as a result of the stabbing. Frank Adonis played Patsy. He's also Vinny in Ace Ventura. He plays Anthony Stable in Goodfellas. He's Valerio's bodyguard in Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, and he was Frankie in True Romance. Joseph Bono played Guido. He was Mikey Franzese in Goodfellas. He's Moosh in Casino, and Frank Sindone in The Irishman. Charles Scorsese played Charlie, Man with Como. This is obviously Martin's dad, and he shows up in a bunch of Scorsese stuff. Don Dunphy was the radio announcer for the Dauthuille fight. He plays himself because they actually used the recording of the commentators for the fight during the fight scene, just for the championship fight, I think. But he's also himself in Woody Allen's Bananas, and he's also a fight announcer in The Fighter, which might, again, be archival recording. Gene LaBelle played ring announcer during the Reeves fight. That's the first fight we see. We've had him so far this year doing stunts in Bronco Billy, Airplane, Battle Creek Brawl, Any Which Way You Can, and Inside Moves. So he's all over the place. Johnny Barnes played Sugar Ray Robinson. He played Turnbull AC in The Warriors. Marty Denkin played the referee in the Gennaro fight. He was a referee in a bunch of Rockies and Ali, so he's probably
actually a referee.
Robert B. Loring was cornerman number 2 during the Sardan fight. Earlier this year, we had him as Johan in Octagon. Michael Badaluccio played soda fountain clerk. This was his first credit, and we'll see him way later as George Nelson in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and as Matilda's father in Leon the Professional. Geraldine Smith played Janet. She was a hooker earlier this year for Night of the Juggler. John Arceri played the maitre d'. He was a Christmas tree salesman in When Harry Met Sally and a chauffeur in Batteries Not Included. Mary Albee played underage ID girl. I don't know which one, but I can only assume the one that they show the picture of.
Yeah, in the movie, he looks at the two pictures and he's telling me they're the same girl. Apparently, in real life, they are not the same girl.
Oh, that's funny.
That's hilarious.
But the one that was actually in the scene, she also plays pantry girl / vampire in The Monster Squad, and she has mostly stunt credits since then, including Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Exorcist 3, Scream 3, Rush Hour 2, and The Squeakquel, also a bunch of television. Alan Joseph played the jeweler, who says, "I really wish you'd brought me the belt." He plays Babe's father in Marathon Man. He was Mr. X in Eraserhead, and we'll see him next year in Saturday the 14th. So the film is a thumbs up from me. It's gorgeous. The black and white was the obvious choice here because it looks so great in black and white, especially stuff like that first shot of the mic descending from the ceiling where it's just pitch black, like just solid black, and then suddenly this image is dripping down into the frame.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's a thumbs up, and the black and white was an inspired choice. Like,
yes.
I was thinking about this very specifically when, like, he's walking down the hallway with all these, like, support staff and reporters and all this stuff around him, and he's wearing his robe, and he's got his, they've got gloves. Like, all of this stuff I think would be very distracting to the scene if it was all in color.
But because it's black and white, and because you have Michael Chapman lighting it so brilliantly.
Yeah. And the same thing for when he's in the ring, and it's just, the ring is white, and you get this, like, stark background, but then you sort of lose the audience, too, and you can really focus on the fighters. Like, I think that the black and white was really the only way to do this.
Yeah, there's so much contrast within the ring, and this it's also unique so far in its approach to boxing photography in that the camera's actually inside the ring with the fighters, which was not the case prior to this film. Even in Rocky, the camera very rarely was inside the ring with the fighters. But because he's doing it single camera, and the point is that he's planning out every single cut basically as he goes, that he's getting these inserts very specifically for where he wants them in the fight. And they're actually startlingly accurate to the archival footage of the actual fights.
I think that on, like, a filmmaker and skill level, that this movie is amazing.
I agree.
And
there's a lot of hesitation in everything that we're saying so far. We're trying to give it as much credit as we possibly can.
I want to give it a lot of credit, and it's because I have such a problem with the
rest of the story.
The characters just not being super deep, and the story being fairly simplistic. Like, I just wanted more because everything else about this movie is so great.
Yes.
That if you could just give me a little, and I guess it's based on a true story, so maybe there just isn't more there to give me.
Right.
But, then embellish it.
And a lot of people think that Jake LaMotta might not be remembered very much at all were it not for this film.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Is it a thumbs up, Richard?
It's a thumbs up. I think it's, like you've already said, it's marvelously well crafted, well edited, well shot.
I mean, the editing too, like Thelma, round of applause. This is probably the best work she's ever done. And even though there's only 10 minutes of actual boxing footage, it's the most visceral boxing footage you see in anything.
And I think that, I might not even have, when I was watching it, given it as much credit as it deserves, because I think people after this movie mimicked it, and so I'm used to this style now. But
because we've seen
cutting a fight,
and you've seen like Snatch enough times that you're used to the variable speed where you're like in regular speed and then slowing down to indicate that like focus is being drawn and people are being sucked into the moment, which was not a way that they shot these kind of fight scenes before this.
Yeah, and so so I'm sure this movie has broken ground and established a way of doing this that wasn't done before.
That being said, nobody like learns a significant lesson. It seems like Jake is still the same asshole at the end of the movie that he was at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. I don't really respect Vickie when we first meet her, and I don't really respect her throughout the rest of the movie because she just makes poor decisions.
I don't care about any of the fights, which I think is the biggest problem. Like the difference between Rocky and this is that I care who wins the fight in Rocky, and here I don't care because they've already set up that he's a jerk, and so maybe I want him to lose the fight. So it's just kind of like, oh, I wonder how this fight will end. It's irrelevant to me, and it's basically irrelevant to the character because even when he loses the fight, we'll see him in another fight later.
He wins
so
some,
who
he
cares?
loses some. That was another thing that bothered me. There was a lot of like montage-y moments in this movie that covered a lot, and like my producer brain was like, what a freaking pain in the ass. Like the whole
to set up all these separate fights.
Yeah, all these separate fights and to have them all be so distinct, and then
some of them you literally only get
and even
2
the whole
frames.
wedding scene. I'm just like, you basically put on a wedding in order to get a few shots to make a montage. Like, how obnoxious is that? But like that aside, I'm like, I don't think it was necessary. It didn't really serve a lot of purpose for me to see all of these different fights. It didn't progress anything for me.
Yeah.
Well, I think of it in terms of something like the movie The Natural. That movie is a baseball movie with a lot of baseball games. And there's a lot of baseball game montages. But in the end, it comes down to this big last game.
Right.
And they build it up enough that you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is...
Now it's do or die, right?
Yeah, this is really important. Despite having endless montages of endless amounts of games that don't really matter. Like, they win some, like they win some, they lose some. But in this movie, like the last fight, it just happens and then it's over. And
you don't care who won or lost because it's irrelevant.
Like, even if he had won, I'd be going, well, what's changed now that he's won?
Yeah, because what's changed is he defended the title again, so then he has to fight someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how the boxing works, is you have the title until someone wins it from you. The end. Like, it's not like he was just going to retire right there after losing to Robinson.
It seems like, no, this might just be a problem with boxing, but it seems like you just defend your title every month. It's like, okay.
Or more often than that.
Or even more often than that.
At the time, at least. Like, nowadays.
So, like, who cares?
Yeah, the big fighters that are, like, literally, like, the people wearing the belts fight, like, once a year or maybe once every other year.
Yeah.
But 2 of these fights with Robinson happened within 3 weeks of each other, they said.
Yeah. But, I mean, and another problem, and this is just, me and maybe the era in which I'm watching this film, I don't like watching people beat each other up.
Yeah, I've never liked boxing.
It is brutal and awful
but neither
to
did
watch.
Scorsese.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't enjoy this. There's nothing about this that I enjoy watching 2 people just pummel each other in the head. This is dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, it's technically it's gorgeous, and the performance from De Niro is incredible. Everything he's doing is amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't fault him for the fact that there's not enough to the character.
Yeah.
And I think that he shows incredible range, not just in, the obvious stuff with the weight gain, but just in terms of going from, this pathetic loser by the end of the film. It's not just that he's heavier, it's that he's more vulnerable and that he's sadder at the end of the film than he starts the film. Like at the beginning, he doesn't care what anybody thinks, and he's suspicious of everybody. And by the end of the film, he's just a shell of his former self, and you feel the difference in the person.
Yeah.
And
but he's still an asshole who hasn't learned anything.
Yeah, but he's not trying to pick fights with everybody anymore. Now it's just like I feel like the Jake LaMotta at the beginning of the film, if two cops showed up and showed him, hey, this picture of this girl, he'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, there's no way they would be able to drag him into a cell or even arrest him for any of this stuff. And, you know, instead of saying like, hey, this girl's 14, at the beginning they're like, hey, this girl's only 15. It's like, cool, I do. Then now we're married.
Well, the difference a year makes.
Yeah. I think it's a thumbs up, but for me, it's not going super high on my list because there's not a story here that I'm following that I care about. There's no character for me to identify with outside of maybe Joey.
I mean, I don't think it has, for me, it does not have a lot of rewatchability to it because, I mean, aside from maybe as research for, you know, shooting a fight scene or, you know, just a well-composed movie, I don't need to see it again.
Here's another question. Did Joey have sex with Vickie?
I don't think so.
Never? They never had sex?
I don't think so. It never occurred to me that they did. I thought that he was, you know, Jake was just being a jealous asshole.
Well, she says that they did.
Yeah, because she just is like, oh, you think we did? Fine, then we did. Because it doesn't matter what I tell you.
But she doesn't try to contradict herself when he starts marching over to Joey's place at all. She doesn't say like, look, I just said that because you won't stop bugging me about it. This didn't actually happen.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't think it matters what anybody tells him. So,
because I always, having watched it in the past, thought that they did before they got married. Like when Joey says, oh, I took her out a couple of times but nothing happened. I thought the implication was he did take her out a couple of times and they did have sex back then, but Joey never told Jake about it because he knew that Jake was into her.
I don't know.
And that when she had sex with Salvy and Tommy, that she literally had sex with all those people, but before Jake was married to her, before Jake even knew who she was.
I don't know. Maybe.
But the fact that they don't spell that out bothers me.
I kind of just assumed that he was just being a jealous jerk. And when she, you know, just says, yeah, fine, we did, then it was just her being like, I'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Just, you know, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I'm in that camp with Jesse.
Yay.
But if you're just trying to get him to leave you alone, then why chase him down the street and get in front of him for him to knock you down to the sidewalk? Or try and rip him off of Joey?
Well, I mean, she obviously doesn't want the stupid thing that she just said to cause him to kill his brother.
Then why say it in the first place?
Because
or why
people
not
say
correct
stupid things when they're fighting.
I don't know. It bothers me that it's so unclear whether or not they did have sex. Because when Joey says, no, it didn't happen, and he's all cagey about it, and he's like, yeah, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. And it's like, are you just that afraid of lying to your brother?
Yeah.
Or are you really insulted?
But he's not. He's not afraid of lying to his brother because he lies. He's already lied to him.
Yeah. I think that this brings me back to kind of my point at the beginning. I think this actually would have been a lot more interesting of a movie if it was told from Vickie's perspective. Because I think we would have gotten a lot more insight and emotions and understanding of these characters, which I don't think we explore at all.
Yeah. And maybe we would have seen more of the lashing out that caused her to say you were worse than you are depicted in this film.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could have pushed the characters further and gotten more insight into what was really happening.
But for the record...
And we could have had less boxing because it wasn't relevant.
Yeah. Jake's children think that the film overdoes the violence on his part. That they think that he was a nicer person than that. But obviously I would trust Vickie over the kids because I assume that he would probably spare his more violent tendencies for when they're not around.
Yeah.
So it would be hard for them to judge him fairly.
Yeah.
But what about your list, Jess? Where's this going on the list?
Yeah, so it's not as high as I think people would expect it to be. It's at 42 for me.
Okay.
It is below Blues Brothers and above Last Married Couple in America. And again, it's because I don't really need to see this film again. I appreciate it. I think that is there's a lot of stuff in there to appreciate, but it's, for me, it's pretty low on my rewatch list.
Yeah. Richard, what do you got?
I have it at 34, putting it just below the Stuntman and just above the Big Red One.
I have it literally exactly between you two at 38. It's right below Hopscotch and just above The Mirror Cracked. I think that's everything for Raging Bull. If you guys have any thoughts you'd like to share with us, we are Vintage Video Pod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd, where, as I've said before, you can find each of our full movie rankings for the year. We can also be found at vintagevideopodcast.com. Please consider rating us on iTunes to help people find the show, and if you take the time to leave us a review, we will thank you personally in an upcoming episode. If you're feeling especially generous, you can also support the show through patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Seems Like Old Times, which IMDb describes like so. Wrongfully accused of a bank robbery, a writer seeks the help of his ex-wife, who is now married to the soon-to-be Attorney General of California. We leave you now with the trailer for Seems Like Old Times.
I want quiet in this courtroom.
Your Honor. Your Honor?
Hold it. Just, will you hold it?
No, Your Honor.
Well said, well spoken.
This is the story of a lawyer and her husband, the district attorney.
They offered me the Attorney General spot.
Oh, what a wonderful surprise.
You want another one?
Mm-hmm.
Your ex-husband robbed a bank.
This is also the story of her ex-husband, a writer.
I don't get it.
And two thugs.
This cleared up for you? No, I'm afraid not. You see, I'm blind.
And a bank.
Hi, can I help you?
Yes, you can.
And a stick-up.
Read it. It's self-explanatory.
What do I do?
I don't know. Let's take a look. Stick up, put all your money in the bag, one more sound and you're dead. God bless you.
And a getaway.
I was wondering if I could quit the gang. If the mayor wants out, let him out.
And when Neil Simon brings them all together, it seems like old times.
Did you rob that bank?
Sort of.
What do you mean, sort of?
I did, but I didn't enjoy it.
I don't believe it.
You can believe it. Oh, our wedding pictures didn't turn out that good.
It's part Chevy Chase.
You know, the last thing in the world I want to do is hurt you. I'm putting you in any jeopardy. I'll leave right now. I'm okay.
Part Goldie Hawn.
Hi! Oh, where did he come from?
If I was a stray dog, this is the first place I'd come to.
Part Charles Grodin.
They're getting off. Come on, get down.
Why am I always the last one in the neighborhood to get into bed with you?
Put them all together.
Hold it right there. You're under arrest. Police are on their way. Didn't like the chicken out.
And it's the funniest Neil Simon ever.
How you gonna kidnap us if I'm the one driving the car?
Because I'm the one holding the gun.
I buy that.
If you're innocent, they'll never send you to jail.
Is that how it works, Chester?
Not in my neighborhood.
Seems like old times. A comedy for Christmas.
I want quiet in this courtroom.